Hey guys, and welcome to the first video of Season 3 on the Team Skeptic channel. This is the start of my second year on YouTube, so I figured we'd start off strong with one video debunking two idiots. The video we will be discussing today comes from the #1 flattard in all of Flatardia, Jeranism, or Jism for short. In his video, he covers a recent interview between globe earther Wiggles and the lead singer of Rage Against the Globe Machine, Nathan Oakley. Now the format for this channel is going to change a little bit moving forward, and this video is a good example of why. From now on, when these idiots continue to make the same incorrect assertion over and over that has already been explained, I'm not going to stop the video to call them an idiot over and over. I'll just increase the idiot counter and ding the bell. So in today's video, every time they incorrectly reference the second law of thermodynamics, you will hear a ding and watch the counter grow by itself. So let's begin.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaren from Jeranism, back with another video for you today. A globe with gas pressure next to a vacuum? Yes, another runner-up in the growing list of pseudoscience that's taught to us as actual science.
The only way for you to consider this pseudoscience is if you completely discount gravity as a whole, which we all know that flat earth idiots do not and cannot accept gravity as a fact of reality. It simply violates their world beliefs, and their world beliefs hold more value than the truth does to them. However, not one of them has ever jumped off of a tall building to prove that gravity simply does not exist. But we will give them some time to develop an argument before we actually start breaking down their video. So let's continue.
In this case, we have something that 99% of the world believes in that is clearly impossible nonsense. And now, we will show that. To show an example of how religious zealots refuse to recognize deception and instead argue in favor of the deceivers, we are going to be listening and commenting on a small portion of a recent Flat Earth debate video, number 701, called Wiggles Fallacies.
So Jism is going to be playing some clips from a Nathan Oakley livestream, and I will leave the links to both videos in the description so you can watch them in their entirety later if you'd like. However, for my video, we will only be playing the significant parts of Jism's video in the interest of sanity and brevity. I will say this though, Jism and other flat earth idiots automatically think that we are the zealots because we believe in ideas that violate their worldview, without ever considering that their worldview could possibly be wrong.
Now we are picking up from a point where Wiggles, a regular on the show who argues on behalf of the globe, is telling everyone that he has checked Himawari photos of Earth and contrasted them with ISS photos at the same time, and that they match. Nathan is arguing that space is a fake medium and pointing out the Wiggles fallacy of affirming the consequent, if P then Q, Q then P. If these pictures of clouds claim to be taken from space of Earth match the ones taken from Earth, then the pictures must be taken from space. It's a formal logical fallacy.
So it appears to me that this is not what Wiggles is actually doing. Jism is making the assertion that Wiggles' argument is that the verified pictures of cloud formations from the Earth match the pictures from Himawari 8, and therefore must come from space. However, what Wiggles is actually saying is that the pictures of cloud formations from the ground must always match Himawari's, as any picture that does not match would be evidence of fakery in the Himawari photographs. The people who put Himawari 8 into space are the ones saying that Himawari is actually in space. Wiggles is testing this assertion, and Oakley is just doing his normal talk over his opponent bullying routine. But Nathan Oakley is a fucking idiot.
Now let's listen in.
Oh no, I'm not. This just doesn't prove something. It just is a test that would show that there was a contradiction there. Like I'm looking for a possible contradiction. If the cloud formations were different, then I say, well, okay, then something's up here.
As anyone can see, Wiggles is not making the assertion that Himawari 8 is in space. He is testing the validity of that assertion, and a contradiction in cloud formations from the ground against what Himawari 8 puts out from space would invalidate Himawari 8's legitimacy.
No, they're taken from a fake region.
Now that's an assertion, Nathan Oakley, a positive claim that space does not exist, therefore Himawari 8's photos must be fake. Now the burden of proof is put on Nathan Oakley to provide evidence that space does not exist. Flat earthers have no idea what it means to make a positive claim and why there is a need to provide evidence of such claim. But flat earthers are idiots.
Don't worry about the cloud formations. They could just easily replicate them like I can replicate Narnia out in a region of Scotland and just say that I've gone through a wardrobe to get there. Like you're saying that you've gone into a region that can't exist to take these pictures.
Nathan Oakley says that this region of space cannot exist again, but has provided no proof of this assertion again. And while you can replicate Narnia, what you can't replicate is actually going there, because it doesn't exist. Whereas we can easily look up in the sky and verify that the weather systems either match or do not match what Himawari 8's pictures predict. There's a huge difference in these two claims, Nathan.
You're ignoring my debunking of the region the pictures have come from completely, Wiggles. You keep reasserting that you want to make your point regardless of the problems revolving around the region that they're taken from. You're just ignoring that, right, Wiggles? Moving on because it doesn't fit with your example.
The funny thing is, Wiggles wasn't arguing whether space exists or not, but just providing evidence that backed up the assertion that Himawari 8's photos are accurate. And yes, this assertion supports the narrative that Himawari 8 is actually in space and takes an accurate photo of the globe Earth every 10 minutes. Nathan Oakley doesn't get that, because Nathan Oakley is a fucking idiot.
At this point, someone posts in the chat a link to a video detailing the Himawari photos are simply layers. Wiggles then clicks the link and says,
Well, it's a Mark Sargent video, so it's from a flat earther. Can't trust it.
"Oh, okay, gotcha. If any flat earther posts a video, we should ignore it. It can't be trusted. But what we should trust is anyone saying that these images must come from space." That makes sense, Wiggles. No room for deception there.
Yeah, but Jism, you're also misrepresenting what was being said. You can hear Wiggles slightly laughing as if his comment was more facetious than anything. However, I do believe that what he is saying is that we can't trust the validity of the material because it's coming from a flat earther, not an unbiased verified source. So even if the information is correct, it's not about to be put up for scrutiny and cannot be checked for validity. But let's say that the video about layering came from the Himawari 8 website. I highly doubt Wiggles would have taken the same stance towards the video, even if it supported what Nathan Oakley was saying. Now, I do find it funny that flat earthers always say that we get all of our information from YouTube or on the internet, and we never do our own research. But then here they are, trying to bull rush Wiggles with flat earth YouTube videos. Flat earthers are hypocritical idiots.
So we should just ignore all of our objections and trust that you can defy the second law of thermodynamics in this region no one's going to.
Okay, so this is where the misunderstanding and misapplication of the second law of thermodynamics begins. So I will do my best to explain the second law without turning this video into a lecture about thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics describes how entropy can never decrease over time in an isolated system. This law also covers how pressure will move from areas of higher pressure to areas of lower pressure. Flat earthers believe the heliocentric model regarding the Earth and its atmosphere violates this law, as the atmosphere at a higher pressure does not rush out to areas of lower pressure, which would be the vacuum of space. Now, this would be true if we only took into account air pressure and lack of pressure in the vacuum of space. Then it would absolutely violate that law. However, gravity is a thing, and it holds the atmosphere to the surface of the Earth. We will go into more detail as this video goes on, but this is the first time that the flat earthers have misrepresented the laws of thermodynamics, so...
You've not been there. You saying you've compared what the Himawari does. You haven't. You haven't been there. You don't know that space is real. You haven't got the vaguest clue.
Nathan Oakley, you're an idiot, because this is not what Wiggles is saying. He is comparing known observations from the ground from photos claimed to have been taken from Himawari 8 in space. He is not making the positive claim that Himawari 8 is in fact in space. He is only testing the consistency of their information. If Nathan Oakley would just shut up long enough for Wiggles to ever get out a full thought, he would understand this.
It defies the second law of thermodynamics, but you'll defend it to the hilt, or at this stage just completely ignore that objection and move on to the pictures anyway. and start picking them apart, even though they can't possibly be real.
Exactly. Instead of just asserting that something is real or not real, Wiggles is actually checking the information from the ground against the information coming from Himawari 8 looking for inconsistencies. Nathan Oakley, however, is just making a meritless assertion that Himawari 8 must be fake because space cannot exist. He might quote the second law of thermodynamics, however, he is completely wrong about that.
Well, let's address that that you think space violates the second law of thermodynamics.
Oh, really?
Let's
What,
address
like we've been
that.
trying to do for the last 50 minutes?
Well, yes, it does violate the law of nature that is the second law of thermodynamics. It's a law because it has never been proven wrong, ever. Hence, it's a law. Hot flows to cold, high pressure to low pressure, always and forever.
Jism, you're an idiot. And it's now obvious that you are in the same boat as Nathan Oakley when it comes to understanding physics and the laws of conservation. Flat earthers refuse to accept gravity as the explanation for why there is no violation of the second law of thermodynamics. I will say this, the laws of conservation are some of the hardest concepts in science to understand without actually being in a science environment. As I've said, we will be covering most of this a bit later in this video, but I can guarantee that we are not just leaving this topic alone.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. You can't have gas pressure without a container. The gas that we all breathe needs something to press on. It's pressure. That's what defines it. So at the top, Wiggles, of your belief in a vacuum, what's the gas pressure pressing on?
So here's where the ultimate misunderstanding on the flat earth side occurs. What they are saying about pressures going from higher pressure to lower pressure is true, and if gravity didn't exist, they would be absolutely right about the atmosphere needing a container to hold the atmosphere in. However, flat earthers always miss out on two key points. First, what is pressure? Pressure is force per unit volume. Pressure is, however, not a force itself. But when a force acts on a mass, it generates pressure as well. Gravity is a force, so when it pulls the atmosphere down, it generates a pressure. Gravity gets weaker with elevation or distance from the center of the Earth, and this is exactly why we have a pressure gradient through our atmosphere. The pressure from the force of gravity pulling down on the atmosphere is in a state of equilibrium with the atmospheric pressure pushing in all directions. This is evident by driving up a mountain and watching a partially inflated balloon completely inflate on its own, purely from the reduction of atmospheric pressure holding the gas inside the balloon to a confined volume. So there is no need for a container to keep the atmosphere from escaping the Earth, you just have to accept the fact that gravity is real.
It's not pressing on anything.
Well, then it can't be here. It would dissipate into the vacuum. The gas would fill the space, Wiggles 2019. If it's not pressing on anything, it's going to disperse, Wiggles.
Only when no other forces are acting upon it, Nathan. By applying the force of gravity, you are essentially making all molecules above a specific atmospheric molecule the container it's pressing on.
Okay, yeah, so for clarity, Nathan, I'm going to now entertain the idea that you are saying.
It's not my idea that I am saying, it is. This is probably the 6th time I've said this on this show. This is not my idea. It does not need entertaining. It is a law of nature. Not my idea.
No, Nathan. This is your idea. At least, it's your incorrect interpretation of the laws of thermodynamics. So as far as scientific discussions go, this is just your idea. Flat earthers like to try and hijack known science and twist it to fit their narratives, and then stick their fingers in their ears when you try to correct them. Nathan Oakley, you're a fucking idiot.
But Nathan, don't you think like all these professors would have picked up on this if there were a contradiction there? Don't you think all these professors who study the thermodynamics, entropy, wouldn't they have picked up on this?
They did. I've got a video out from an MIT professor that explains that if you have gas pressure next to a vacuum and you don't have a barrier, the gas fills the space.
A couple of things to point out here. First, I highly doubt that this professor is talking about the atmosphere escaping the Earth's gravitational field. And second, I really highly doubt that he is even a flat earther, so trying to use his video to prove something that he doesn't believe in is probably going to lead to intellectual dishonesty at best. But let's go ahead and see what the professor is going to say.
Let's try another pretty simple process. Let's just take a gas in some volume, V, and over here is going to be vacuum of equal volume, and we're going to remove the barrier. You know what's going to happen spontaneously, right? The gas is going to fill the available volume once it becomes available, right? The gas is going to fill the available volume once it becomes available.
So it seems they do know this, Wiggles. It's a law. A natural law. Not my idea. Not something that needs entertaining. A natural law. The gas would fill the space.
So basically, if you were to take what the professor stated and apply it to this argument, removing the barrier would be the equivalent of removing gravity. Oh, and let's not forget to ring the bell for Nathan Oakley for misrepresenting the laws of thermodynamics again.
Yeah, wouldn't all these professors realize that?
Yeah, they do!
Damn, calm down, Oakley. I really hope he doesn't yell at his wife and kids like that when they correct him as well. I think I was lucky to have grown up in a house full of loving parents, because being that aggressive over anything non-life-threatening is a sign of someone who is either mentally unstable or psychopathic. And when you resort to screaming at your opponent in order to get your point across, you lose all credibility with me. If you are right, then you would just laugh at the other person the same way I do when it comes to flat earth idiots.
Are you deaf?
Modern science?
Are you deaf? There's plenty of lectures on the second law of thermodynamics.
So I guess flat earthers are now backtracking on that whole do your own research thing? Because as per Nathan Oakley, you can prove that the earth cannot be a globe by just watching lectures on thermodynamics. Flat earthers are walking contradictions and total fucking idiots.
Yeah, if the second law of thermodynamics implied space doesn't exist.
It does. That's precisely what it implies.
No, it doesn't. You're an idiot.
Implies space does exist?
No, that if you have a vacuum, a vast space, then the gas would fill that space. Unless, of course, there's something to press upon.
You mean like the molecules that are at the top of the atmosphere, which are being pulled down by gravity? For the last time, I'm going to explain it to the idiots who didn't pay attention to the first part of the video. The force of gravity pulling down on the atmosphere generates a pressure, while the pressure of the atmosphere is generated from the gas molecules bouncing off of each other. If the atmospheric pressure is more than the pressure generated from gravity, then the gas will expand until it reaches an equilibrium of the two pressures. Pay attention, Oakley, because you are wrong, and you are a fucking idiot.
There isn't, so we can't have space. That's the point. Well done, Wiggles. That's exactly what it implies. That natural law. Not my opinion, not what I think. That natural law that holds true always. That natural law would suggest that space is fake.
You don't understand the laws of thermodynamics. It doesn't suggest that space is fake, and you're an idiot.
So, do you have something that contravenes that law beyond your religious belief of space? Or is that your only proof that you can defy this natural law, your religious belief in space?
Okay, so Nathan, if the second law...
Seems like you're asking me a question. Do you have any proof beyond your religious belief about what Earth is and what space is that defies this natural law that holds true always?
You're not asking him for evidence to contradict the laws of thermodynamics. You're asking him to provide evidence to falsify your understanding of thermodynamics. You don't even believe in gravity, so you're not in a position to even refute our model of the atmosphere, because without gravity, we would not have an observable pressure gradient, especially with a dome. I don't understand why flat earthers will only learn and apply about 10% of the free information out there, and believe that is enough to debunk thousands of years of documented and well-explained science. Oh yeah, I forgot. Because flat earthers are fucking idiots.
Nathan, it's like you're stuck here. You can't get past where you're like stumbling over your own belief.
Oh wow, so Nathan is stumbling over his own belief? Have you ever heard of projection? It is not flat earthers who are stumbling on their own beliefs. It is those who claim space is real, despite the evidence against it.
Oh, Jism, what evidence do you personally have that space is fake? What non-biased evidence do you have that is not completely explained by our current scientific understanding? And just to be clear, flat earthers have zero consistency in their belief system. Some believe in a dome, some believe in additional lands. Some believe the moon is a rock, and some believe it's a fucking light source. Some believe God created the flat earth, and some don't even believe in gods at all. The only thing you idiots can agree on is that the earth is not a globe.
It's those who cannot shed the chains of public indoctrination. They are the ones stumbling over their beliefs, because their beliefs cannot stand up to the scrutiny of real science.
The real science argument. I love it. Why don't you go to a scientist and ask him if what you are doing is real science? We as a people cannot possibly believe you when you cannot explain better what we already know to be factual. Flat earthers can say anything they want, but when it comes to practical use, they fall on their face every single time. Just ask Wolfie6020. He has held many flat earth contests with great prizes, and no flat earther yet has been able to complete any of his challenges. And with all the homeless and struggling flat earthers, don't tell me they don't need the money. It's simply because the challenges cannot be successfully completed on a flat earth model, but can only be done on a globe earth model and in reality. How's that for scrutiny, Jism? Why don't you put your beliefs to the real test? Take one of Wolfie's challenges and complete it for the free merchandise. The only problem is, you're a flat earther and are doomed to fail, because the earth's not flat, and flat earthers are fucking idiots.
Science that follows the scientific method and not the worldview of some men who use math and antiquated axioms and unproven theories to sell the world on the fantasy that is planets and galaxies in an endless vacuum where all these places exist.
Jism, if you want us to believe that the earth is flat, then prove it. If the earth is flat, then it should be easy enough for you to explain everything with greater predictive precision than any globe earth model. Because if the earth was flat, then literally every globe representation of the earth is so completely wrong that it would be easy to point out and then explain daily observations that were exclusive to a flat earth model. The problem is, you will always run into an observation that will require you to just discount the scientific explanation without regards to any evidence that supports it.
Alright, let's lay this out in a few diagrams to explain it. But first, we may need to spin the MIT chalkboard so that people better understand the second law of thermodynamics, and so now we will have the gas pressure at the ground level and the vacuum on top of it. We can watch, but the same holds true.
Take a gas in some volume, V, and over here is going to be vacuum of equal volume, and we're going to remove the barrier. You know what's going to happen spontaneously, right? The gas is going to fill the available volume once it becomes available.
Now, globe proponents have only one answer, and that answer is almost always the same: gravity.
Well, because gravity is the force that keeps the atmosphere from escaping the Earth's surface. Gravity acts as the elusive container that you're looking for. Think of it like this. As you blow up a balloon, it begins to develop greater and greater pressure on the inside. But as long as that pressure is lower than the pressure generated by the force holding the balloon together, the balloon will not pop. Gravity pulls down on the atmosphere, which acts as the container flat earthers are having a hard time finding. But flat earthers don't believe in gravity, because flat earthers are fucking idiots.
Yes, good old magic sauce. So gravity holds the gas to Earth. Well, let's see if we can show how this too is tragically flawed with some little diagrams I'll walk you through now. So in the first diagram we have a container, and we've got gas pressure or air on the left side, and then we've got a divider, and then we create a vacuum in the right side of the container. Now, as we remove the barrier or the divider, we know that the gas, the air, will immediately fill all the available space. High pressure to low pressure, always.
Now, I see nothing wrong with this diagram, but Jism is treading on thin ice here, because his diagram shows a uniform atmosphere, which is not what we observe in reality. In fact, this is something that flat earthers have no explanation for and continue to dodge this observation as if it is just magically supposed to be a gradient in our atmosphere but uniform in all other pressurized systems. Flat earthers love special pleading, but flat earthers are idiots.
In this case, we'd still have gas pressure because we are in a container, giving the remaining gas something to press on. Now we'll go to this next diagram where we're going to move. Instead, we're going to rotate our container and this time create a vacuum on the top and the gas pressure below. Again, when we remove the divider, we know exactly what will happen. The gas will fill the void.
Yeah, none of this has any relevance to how the laws of thermodynamics violate our understanding of the atmosphere of the Earth. It's basically just repeating high school physics, which I guess is good for flat Earth idiots who didn't pay attention their first 2 times through grade 10.
Again, we still have gas pressure because we have a container, which is a necessary antecedent because we can't have gas pressure without the container to press on.
Well, I would argue that the necessary antecedent does not need to involve the word container, but force. The container is held together by forces, which generates a pressure to push back on the atmospheric pressure. If the atmospheric pressure exceeds the force holding the container together, it will break through. The force holding the atmosphere to the surface of the Earth is gravity, and its force dissipates with elevation, and the pressure of the atmosphere at any specific elevation is in a state of equilibrium with the pressure generated by the force of gravity on the individual molecules of the atmosphere. So as the force of gravity decreases, so does the atmospheric pressure. At the edge of space, there is still atmosphere being contained by gravity. However, the force of gravity is extremely weak, so the atmospheric pressure will be low too. There is, however, no pressurized system next to a vacuum. There is only a very weak atmospheric pressure next to an extremely low pressure from the void of space. No violation of thermodynamics, just a bunch of flat earth idiots who don't understand science.
Alright, now I've changed the diagram a little bit because I've taken the top off my container. We've made a vacuum on top and we have gas pressure below. We can only have gas pressure because the divider is there, and we have a container below allowing the gas to press upon something. Alright, so now I have removed the walls in the vacuum and made it an infinite vacuum like we are told exists all around us. We can still have gas pressure though, below and in the container. But what do you suppose would happen if I remove the divider again? Well, if I take the top off the container which holds the gas, it is instantly gone into the void. High pressure to low pressure. Second law of thermodynamics.
I've already addressed this more than I intended to, so let me just move the counter up and ring the dinger.
Well, of course, our gas pressure is all gone. It has nothing to press against and will immediately hold to that second law of thermodynamics and dissipate into the endless vacuum above.
Which is absolutely true, but has nothing to do with the atmospheric pressure not escaping into space, because you are just completely ignoring gravity. You will never be taken seriously until you start displaying some intellectual honesty and addressing the arguments as a whole. You're an idiot.
Now let's see if we can test the only explanation globe defenders have. It gets them out of all jams, maybe this one too. Will gravity hold the gas to the Earth? Now, if this was the case, if gravity holds gases to the Earth, then it will be quite easy to test this.
Jism. It's already been tested and demonstrably proven to be true. How else do you explain pressure gradients with elevation? We say it's because of the dissipation of the gravitational force. Flat earthers say nothing at all, because flat earthers are fucking idiots.
Now, I don't have a vacuum pump or a chamber to do this test, but many do. I've seen people with vacuum chambers on YouTube. So let's look at this example. Let's say that we are on a sphere Earth and that gravity is, as Newton said, an attraction between masses. So we are on Earth and gravity is pulling down. In the left side of the chamber we have gas pressure or air. On the right side we create a vacuum. Okay, now here's the problem for globe defenders and space religious zealots. If I lower the divider just a tiny bit, just bring it down a hair, what do you think will happen to the gas on the left? Is this what globers believe? That only the gas at the top would fill the vacuum?
This is such a bad example, as it doesn't represent Earth, its atmosphere, or our current understanding of thermodynamics. First problem, how tall is the divider height and the portal at which the volume of gas will be able to escape to? Second problem is how much gas is in the first chamber. If the column of height is 200 miles tall and there isn't much gas in the container, then nothing will happen to the gas on the left, or very little will pass to the right side, because gravity will hold the gas in the first chamber. However, if there is sufficient amount of gas in the left chamber, then it wouldn't matter where the portal to the other chamber is. The gas will attempt to reach a state of equilibrium and will flow from one chamber to the next. It's a flawed thought experiment at best, as it doesn't take into account the pressure gradient in our atmosphere or gravity.
Or would the gas fill the entire available space? Well, if you believe gravity holds the air pressure down to Earth, even though there is an adjacent vacuum, then you have an untested and an unproven claim, because the gas will dissipate and fill the entire void.
Again, it's hard to argue against your point because you're being so intellectually dishonest by not representing the globe Earth model correctly. Start by not misrepresenting our model and stop being an idiot.
High pressure to low pressure, always. Now again, we'd still have gas pressure, but because we are in a container, giving the gas something to press upon. To show the impossibility of the consensus scientific belief, we again need to make the vacuum infinite. We again pull down our divider just an inch, and what do you think will happen? Well, of course, the high pressure gas will exit the chamber into the adjacent vacuum and be gone forever.
Nothing new here, just basic physics explained by someone who denies basic physics. And none of this is even significant to the original points being made by Nathan Oakley and Wiggles.
No ifs, ands, or buts. Find someone with a vacuum chamber who can do this test at ground level, where gravity is said to be the strongest, and you'll see if gravity will hold the gas to the Earth, or if the gas will adhere to the second law and exit the vacuum. Now let me show a diagram that shows what we are taught. There's the Earth, and on it we have gas pressure. But there's no container. It is simply pressing down. But above that is the endless, expanding, empty, extremely low pressure of outer space without any divider and without a container.
Well, I already covered how and why it is pressing down, so let's address the idiot counter first. But I would like to point out that he finally acknowledged the pressure gradient we observe in reality. My question to all these fuckwits is, what causes the gradient of pressure? If gravity doesn't exist, what force is it that makes molecules in our atmosphere press against each other harder at the surface than it does at higher elevations? Submit your answers on a used piece of toilet paper, as toilet paper is already designed to absorb your bullshit.
Well, that's simply insane and impossible. Of course, the gas pressure with no container and no divider will do what the second law of thermodynamics requires. It will go from high pressure to low. It will immediately leave Earth and fill the adjacent void, leaving no gas pressure, no air, nothing.
So as the force of gravity dissipates, there will be a point at which the atmospheric pressure is relatively close to the pressures of the void of space. At that point, there is no rush of air from one pressure to the next, because the pressures are relatively the same. It's more like a general mixing of the upper limits of our atmosphere with the space that surrounds the Earth.
Just the vacuum of space we are all taught exists all around us. So consensus science says we live on a sphere, a globe with this tiny sliver of gas pressure or atmosphere or air surrounding us. Yet this all exists next to an endless vacuum?
Well, the scientific consensus might agree that we live on a globe with a relatively small sliver of atmosphere, but the scientific consensus also says that the vacuum of space isn't a true vacuum and actually has its own small amount of pressure. So don't start pulling the intellectual dishonesty that you're known for by quoting the scientific consensus when it suits you and misrepresenting it when it doesn't. Jism. You're a fucking idiot.
But there is no container, no walls, no ceilings to press upon, and worse still, no divider. Well, it is simple to prove this is not reality, as with no divider, no barrier, you'd immediately lose all atmosphere on Earth to the vacuum of space.
Again, you are completely disregarding gravity as if you know for a fact that gravity does not exist, and gravity explains this observation without contradiction. Gravity is the container, and you're an idiot.
This doesn't even take into account that the Earth is said to be spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. Ever been on the gravitron? As it spins, things are flung outwards. The atmosphere, the air, the gas pressure would be flung outwards, and of course, we would never even get to that point because there is no divider.
Jism, you are so stupid. The gravitron, for those of you that don't know, is a circus ride called by many different names. It spins at a high rate and you are forced up against the wall due to the centrifugal force. Once there's enough force pushing you against the wall, the floor is lowered and you stick to the wall, defying gravity. However, the gravitron becomes a useless ride when you mirror reality and spin it at a rate of 1 rotation per day. Maybe it's the use of the big number, 1,000 miles per hour, that amazes and confuses flat earth idiots.
There is no barrier, and hence the gas cannot even exist there to be flung outward anyway. It's long gone. The globe would have no air, no atmosphere, no gas pressure. No container, no gas pressure. No barrier, no gas pressure.
Gravity pulling on atmosphere? Gas pressure. Jism's an idiot.
And yet 99% of the world believes this vacuum of space exists directly next to the gas pressure we have on Earth, with no container, no barrier, no divider.
Because 99% of the world accepts the fact that gravity is reality and generates enough force to hold the atmosphere to the surface of the Earth, while 1% of the world, like yourself, are fucking idiots.
The only thing they have is gravity that holds the gas pressure to Earth as it spins and flies through space at 2.2 million miles per hour.
Gravity doesn't hold gas pressure anywhere. It generates its own pressure when it pulls on the atmosphere, which dissipates with elevation. It is now evident that your only argument you have is a blind denial of the presence of gravity, which means that you have nothing, and you're an idiot.
And yet, here we have gas pressure. I'm breathing it with every breath that I take.
Yeah, and can you please stop doing that? You do realize that with every breath you take, you are literally stealing oxygen from someone else who deserves it. Could you imagine if only flat earthers were alive today? There would never be any technological advancements, and someone would have to rediscover fire. Flat earthers are fucking idiots.
So the belief in a vacuum of space, an endless void of super low pressure, is simply impossible. Gravity, as I've just shown, doesn't solve this one at all.
Jism, you have shown nothing at all. How can you claim to have shown how gravity doesn't work in this situation when you didn't even honestly represent our understanding of gravity properly? Once you apply the force of gravity as explained by our understanding of mass attracting mass, there is no problem with the way our atmosphere acts next to the low pressure void of space. The only problem with taking the intellectually honest position is that you will have to admit that there's an explanation that completely conforms to observational reality. Now, moving forward, Jism goes on to waffle about pseudoscience and religious beliefs of science, but I think we've heard enough of that idiot's bullshit salad. I'm going to move it up to where Nathan Oakley and Wiggles start talking again, and a link will be in the description if you want to watch the whole thing.
We have covered twice. I have a video from a professor at MIT who explains that if you have a vacuum and you have a gas pressure, precisely the setup we have in your religious belief about Earth, then the gas would fill the space.
Nathan Oakley, this is not a precise representation of our model of the atmosphere, as our model takes into account a force holding the atmosphere to the surface that dissipates with distance. Maybe this is why he gets so angry all the time. He knows that this is an intellectually dishonest position, but he also knows that intellectual dishonesty is the only position he can take and still maintain his world beliefs. But Nathan Oakley is an idiot.
You know what's going to happen spontaneously, right? The gas is going to fill the available volume once it becomes available.
So when you ask me if the professors would have picked up on this already, I say yes.
The professor is not picking up on the apparent violation of the second law of thermodynamics when he describes how gases move from higher to lower pressures. I mean, please, reach out to him and tell him you think his explanation of thermodynamics is helping you to prove that space doesn't exist. I'm sure he could use a good laugh at a stupid idiot.
I have a demonstration of somebody explaining the law of thermodynamics and how if you have a vacuum next to a gas pressure and you remove the barrier that apparently we don't need in the heliocentric version of the world, then the gas would fill the space.
Asked and answered several times already in this video. There is no need for a physical barrier when you have a force like gravity present. Until you can prove that there is no force present, your attempt at debunking our atmospheric model is still missing that one explanation for everything that is apparently affected by the force of gravity. Like, why is there a pressure gradient in our atmosphere? Or, why do accelerometers read 0 in free fall? Until you start answering these very explainable phenomena without the need for a force like gravity, there is no way I can take you seriously, and I will stand by my assertion that Nathan Oakley, Jism, and all flat earthers are fucking idiots.
So given that we still have gas here, I would assert that you can't have a vacuum of space, Wiggles. It defies that natural law discussed in detail by the professors that you are asking if they know this or not. Yes, Wiggles, they know that there is a natural law called the second law of thermodynamics, and it dictates that the gas would fill the space.
As long as no other forces are present. You keep leaving that one little part out. But you're an idiot.
Yeah, but like, okay, or the other thing I should add, like, Nathan, do you think that the professor thinks that outer space exists?
I don't care. I have played his exact words on a video that explains how if you have a vacuum and a gas pressure next to each other and you remove the barrier, then the gas fills the space. That's what he explained.
But you are misrepresenting what he said and misapplying it as well, when it is not even close to an accurate representation of the globe Earth atmospheric model. But as Nathan Oakley said, he does not care. Accurate representation is not in the best interest of flat earthers, and Nathan Oakley knows this. I think this is where we're going to end the video today. Nathan Oakley wouldn't accurately represent his opponent's model even if he could, and that's a big if, because Nathan Oakley is a fucking idiot. And I'd like to take the time out to thank Nathan Oakley and his anger-fueled style of stupidity, as well as Jism and his patented intellectual dishonesty for participating in the Who's the Biggest Idiot Today challenge. Unfortunately for them, they both won. They're both fucking idiots. Alright, so I'd like to thank you guys for sticking around all the way to the end. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Father Skeptic, and I'm out.